when is it good to go into a situation thinking, I already know enough?
What you have is not necessarily a perfect understanding of reality.
The best is humility combined with knowledge. Just then, an angelic spirit looked back at me. Angelic spirits is the term for people in the world of spirits who are being prepared for heaven. The angelic spirit left the garden, walked up to me, and said, "Do you want to come with me into our paradise? You will see and hear amazing things."
Wow, actually calls it a paradise. And as he just said, these angelic spirits from other passages, I've gathered, they are angels in training, but they haven't, graduated from the program yet. And yet their wisdom seems amazing. What these angelic spirits are, they're very impressive.
And this is, I think, an important divergence point for Swedenborg with a lot of Christian tradition, though not all, because to him, angelic spirit, these are just phases these are just like a stage in a human life.
Experience, that's right.
Angelic spirits is a term for people in the world of spirits who are being prepared for heaven.
People. They're people.
Goodness forbid either of us keels over during this taping. we could very soon be an angelic spirit if we had, over the course of our life, cultivated the desire to be of service. We had tried to keep our, Swedenborg would call them evils, negative tendencies in check. All that leads you to the point where God can't just, okay, you're going up into heaven. You still have to more and more acclimate to a life of really loving the neighbor and loving the Lord. But as you're a heartbeat away from being an angelic spirit. And
being open and teachable is an important characteristic then.
Yeah.
In other words, if nobody's going to tell me about, that's not a good attitude to have as you're crossing over to the other side.
Yeah.
You want to be sort of, oh, I was wrong, or I misunderstood, or tell me more about that, is a teachable attitude.
What about this sales pitch? Do you want to come with me into our paradise? You will see and hear amazing things. It's like, you had me at hello. Okay, it continues. I went along. The angelic spirit said to me, "The people you see here," and there were many of them, "all have a love for truth and have the light of wisdom as a result. There is a magnificent building here that we call the Temple of Wisdom. Yet people are, check this out, yet people are unable to see it if they believe they have a significant amount of wisdom. They are even less able to see it if they believe they have a sufficient amount of wisdom, and they are the least able to see it if they believe their wisdom originates in themselves."
So you got 3 degrees of how unable you are to see this building.
You think you can't see it? I can't
really
see anything.
Can't see it. Yeah, fascinating. But those are sort of steps down. It's going the other way from I don't know, the trees have this beautiful positive meaning.
Yeah.
These are 3 negatives for being able to experience this temple of wisdom. It's wild to think of architecture in the other world that some people can't even see. It's there. It's a public building. There's people all around. There's a lot of people there. And yet there's something you need to get into that garden and to see that building. And that's a certain attitude about your own wisdom, like how amazing are you,
How stuck up are you? There's a lot of people who think, why doesn't God could, if he wanted, just bring everyone up into heaven, and then they would be happy. And so the fact that he's not just doing that is a sign that he's testing us, or he's unfeeling, or he doesn't exist, or something like that. But this, you can't see it if you can't see it. If there's something in your ego that's blocking you, you can't see it. That's why it says earlier that we're angelic spirits. We're not angels yet because we're being prepared for heaven. Yeah. Heaven is a state that takes time and effort to get to. When there's elsewhere in Swedenborg's works, there are people who want to go up to heaven, who do not have heaven inside themselves.
That's right.
There's people who have all kinds of selfishness and materialism, like we all do in spots, And they say, no, just take me up into heaven. And so then the angels who are with him say, sure, you can go up. And you know what happens when they get up there? They can't see anything. They can't see, even though heaven is all around them, they can't see it. And that is a correspondence, because you can be in the middle of heaven here, meaning you can be around your family that loves you, or people that there are opportunities to do good and serve the neighbor, and you just think, this is boring and dumb. I want to go over here and have this fun over here, because you can't see that, you can't understand the heaven is there.
Yeah, that's so good. I think of those miracles in the New Testament where Jesus heals the blind, and it seems like that's a blindness, isn't it, to not be able to see how good you have it, that kind of thing. You know, like your life was actually great, and yet you're thinking about, well, I don't have this, or you're focused on something else.
Or you don't see the narrow way, which is by leaning into this love of doing something useful. There's heaven in there. How many of Jesus's miracles are about the senses? And improving the senses, well, or the things Jesus is involved in. 'Cause you're right, spits on the clay, makes the guy be able to see, but also he who has ears to hear, in the book of Revelation. Seeing they may not see. There's so many about, like, you can see things, but can you really see them? You can hear things, but can you really hear them? Do you really understand what's good in life, and what heaven is, and why heaven is better than hell?
Yeah.
So what is it you have to do to be able to see the temple of wisdom? I feel like there's two categories here. The first is that he says all the angels in training. What it takes to be on the path to angelhood is you have to have a love for truth, and from that, the light of wisdom.
Yes, and a love for truth, to my mind, because he also uses a Latin word, affectio, for truth, that often means a desire or a longing. It doesn't mean you have the truth and you already know the truth and you love that truth necessarily. Often it's just that I really long to know what's true. I don't understand. You know, and we go through this in life where I don't understand myself. I don't understand what's going on in my relationships. I don't know how to do my job. These are all rather personal confessions, but
I'm sure you're doing good in other areas. I mean, you may not have the job or the family stuff, but there's other things.
You know, you're good at something else.
What's your high score
I'm
in
sure
Pac-Man?
there's something. And that's, I'm completely distracted.
Well, let it all out. Okay, so.
Give me a second here. That's so funny. I completely.
Wait, let's remember what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're talking about how okay. I don't know. What were we talking about?
Not knowing things. Not knowing things. Not knowing the value of,
wait.
Of and having a longing for truth. We're talking about longing for truth.
We forgot we were talking about not knowing things.
Yeah, that's right.
It's on brand. We did not know that we were talking about not knowing things.
That's right.
Look how wise we are.
Yeah, so I think he's talking about not just necessarily, I have truth and I love it. It's that I have a longing to know. I'm pretty sure I'm not understanding this, and I would love to understand it. I think that's part of what's going on here.
The world is polarized. Doesn't everyone talk about that? How right now there's political division, especially in the United States, where we are, I think everywhere, where it's like, oh, there's these two sides and people are very entrenched, and the people who are entrenched on one side, they have their whole slew of arguments, and there are things that to them shine brightly, and the counter arguments are relatively worthless.
Yeah.
Everybody on both sides will have admiration for someone on the other side who they feel like is actually looking for the truth. When you present your counter argument and you see somebody who's like, oh wait, is that actually true? Like they're willing to consider it because you can tell what they're actually looking for is the truth.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you would change your mind, everyone admires that, just to see, oh, this person is actually looking for the truth. Oh, that's a longing for the truth.
And I think part of the wisdom, because he says that those two things, right? They have a love for truth, and then that leads them to some wisdom.
Yes.
I wonder if part of that wisdom is the humility in there to realize what you have is not necessarily a perfect understanding of reality, right?
Yeah. So and it could have gone in the other way. It could be that true wisdom is to understand that you are the smartest person in the room. Or that true wisdom is to recognize when you are truly smarter than everyone else. Because, again, Swedenborg, who's reporting this, in a lot of cases, he would have been smartest person in the room.
He won a lot of those competitions, I mean, so to speak. I mean, he checked a lot of the boxes. He was one of the smartest people alive at that time and most knowledgeable and so on.
And yet here he is, showing up to this temple. Its feature is not, you would think it would be people who have a PhD can see it a little.
Yeah, that's
people
right.
who have 3 PhDs can see it more. If you have 112 PhDs, but it's actually the opposite. It has only to do with your attitude toward yourself. And do I believe I've got it all figured out? That's when I don't have it.
And I think that's where you go from knowledge to a level of, there's knowledge, understanding, and wisdom that Swedenborg talks about. And I think, so there's knowledge, and then there's understanding, which is certain comprehension of what you know. But then wisdom, I think, has a more moral component to it, and that humility comes in there, I think.
Has anybody ever said as a compliment, you're a know-it-all?
You know what I love about you?
There is a truth to it is much, regardless of how much we do know about any given thing, it is so much more pleasant to interact with someone who does not believe they know it all.
Yeah, and who's curious,
who's
right?
Curious.
Like just wants to know, or just they're open to, oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Okay.
So we've got these 3 degrees. If you believe you have a significant amount of wisdom, can't really see it. Less so if they have a sufficient. So if I have a lot of wisdom, that's not that. If you feel like you have a lot of wisdom, that's not that good. If you feel like you have enough, like I have plenty, that's even worse. And they are least able to see it. They believe their wisdom originates in themselves.
From themselves. So in other words, somehow it's self-originated. No, like I figured this whole thing out. I'm telling you, I can tell you how reality works because I figured the whole thing out. I didn't get it from somebody else. I didn't get it from reading books. I didn't get it from heaven or something.
Yeah.
I just figured this thing out myself.
Probably most meaningfully contrasted with angels who believe, oh, God has all the wisdom.
Everything.
It all came from God. I'd be nothing without God.
Nothing without it.
We continue. The reason is that people like this lack the love for real wisdom that would make them receptive to the light of heaven. Real wisdom consists in our seeing in the light of heaven that what we know, understand, and have wisdom about is like a drop compared to the ocean of what we do not know, do not understand, and are not wise about. It is hardly anything at all.
So there you have that exact, I was just mentioning knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. There it comes
right.
up. And in all 3 categories, to realize that you're short, you don't have 75 or 100% of what you need. You've got 0.5%.
Because it's the valuable thing, the valuable goal is humility.
Yes.
And the best is humility combined with knowledge. Like if you can go and learn a lot and be very, very smart about something that can help people, you don't want your doctor to say, I know nothing. I don't even know how to do blood pressure. Is it 120/80? Is that good? You don't want that. However, you also don't want your doctor walking in and saying, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm not even going to listen to your complaints about your symptoms because I already know that you're doing.
Yeah. I had a thought, which is that the 18th century in which Swedenborg was operating, and particularly the nobility at that time in Western Europe, it was not known for its overwhelming humility. There were a lot of people who felt like they were really something, and they were perfectly comfortable to have the rest of the world kind of bowing and scraping and being deferential and all that. That was the whole structure of society. And so
I was born for that era, we
were born in the wrong time.
Yes, it wasn't even, you didn't even feel like, oh, these people are just like me, but they're, this commoners.
And so what an amazing message for this very intelligent nobleman who's sort of winning the whole smart person game.
Right.
And for him to get across that message that no, it's a drop. It's a drop compared to the ocean. It's nothing.
If I am going into some kind of conversation with my wife and I think I already know what her concerns are and I know the solution to them and stuff, is that helpful? If I go into like my daughter is upset about something or need, and I already know, like when is it good to go into a situation thinking I already know enough? You can take this into any situation to say, sure, I'm not saying you don't know anything, but what you don't know about this situation, this person, is way more than what you do know. And so there's nothing that is made worse by having that humility and curiosity.
Yeah, that's right. It reminds me of I think it's the Zen idea of the beginner's mind.
Yeah.
And that idea that you empty your cup, first like empty your cup. Like this is what I already have.
Yeah.
Now let's consider that nothing. Now I'm ready to receive something new.
Same thing about God. Same thing with God. That I find myself recoiling when I hear somebody talking about God, and I'm sure you could pull up a million clips of me on YouTube that seem like I'm doing this thing. But for me, when I see somebody talking about God like they just know exactly what God wants in this situation.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
God doesn't want you to something, or God wants this.
Right.
There's something about that certainty that makes me think like there's no way that what God wants is that simple, or that you know so much about what God wants.
Yeah.
But I feel good whenever people have this sort of deferential, like, probably it could be that this is sort of the thing that God is looking for, but knowing that there's so much about the infinite divine that you have no idea about, so many angles you don't see.
Oh. Yeah.
We continue. All the people in this garden paradise who acknowledge on the basis of inner perception and vision that they have relatively little wisdom can see the temple of wisdom. The human mind's inner light lets people see it, but the mind's outer light without any inner light does not. I had often thought about this myself. This is Swedenborg talking. At first through book learning, later through my own perception of it, and finally because I saw it in an inner light, I had come to acknowledge that we have very little wisdom. Therefore, I was granted the ability to see the temple.